What's up, everybody? It's Dave Hartman, your host of the Three Gun Show. I'm sure that sounded funky right there, but I was rocking out. It's the wonderful Three Gun Show music, and I forgot to turn it down. I was like, eventually I'm supposed to talk here, but then I forgot that I was supposed to press that button. So, welcome to the Three Gun Show, episode 285. This episode of the podcast, we learn all we need to know about shooting .308 rifles in three gun with our buddy Dustin Sanchez of JP Rifles. Dustin swapped from limited division to heavy years ago, so he's done all the research and made all the mistakes, and we get to learn from his mistakes and shortcut that, which is the wonderful thing about the Three Gun Show, of course. This interview is going to save you a ton of time in figuring out your .308 setup for three gun. We recorded this podcast to help all of us heavy newbies prepare for the Texas Three Gun Championship, which was postponed due to COVID, and that was postponed to October 2nd through the 4th. So a little backstory on this one. My buddy Jay Christensen and I say this in the podcast too, so sorry for the repeater, but my buddy Jay and I were talking about how much fun it would be to shoot heavy, and but we didn't want to buy like all the gear for it, so we did a thing where we were like, oh, let's just shoot heavy light. Texas Three Gun Championship, you only need a .308 rifle. You can use your normal 9mm pistol and semi-automatic shotgun. So that's what we decided to do. And then we thought it would be fun if we conned all our friends into doing it, and then we announced it here on the Three Gun Show, made some Facebook and YouTube posts about it too. And so there's a pretty big group of people that are going to be shooting heavy at the Texas Three Gun Championship. And because it was moved to October, I think your buddy Dave's going to be able to go too, as long as my company, Stag Arms, allows me to travel again. So we'll find out. Apparently Texas is lousy with COVID. It's spread by chupacabras, I've heard. And, of course, chupacabras are all over Texas. So look it up. It's a fact. Before we get into all that, check out threegunshowproshop.com for all your three-gun needs. We're loading in new products all the time, and a lot of the great stuff that you can expect from the Three Gun Show partners, JP Rifles, Vortex Optics, and more. I'm working on getting more stuff in there as I get time. But it's a busy season. I'm fortunate to still be back at work. Hopefully you are too. If you're not back at work, hang in there. We're pulling for you. And hopefully this podcast helps you get through the weird times that we're experiencing right now. This podcast is also brought to you by the good folks at JP Enterprises, the finest rifle components built by people that actually shoot the games that you do. They don't sell gimmicks, just the most accurate and softest shooting rifles that anyone could want, and they do it with a smile. After years of buying select JP parts to finish off my own builds, I finally own a complete JP rifle. Of course, my wonderful Black Widow-looking JP LRP07 in 6.5 Creedmoor. I recommend going either way. Again, I enjoyed getting the parts over the years because I like building rifles, but you can't beat one of those fresh builds straight from the JP factory. Either way, visit jprifles.com. And speaking of JP Rifles, as I mentioned, we've got Dustin Sanchez, who, ironically, not when we recorded this, but is now my counterpart at JP. And so Dustin is the marketing guy at JP Rifles. I'm the marketing guy at Stag Arms. So we're mortal enemies, and we just talked today, but still good friends. So here is a wonderful podcast where Dustin teaches us everything we need to know about shooting .308 in three gun, including ballistics, what kind of projectiles to buy, what kind of cartridges to buy, what kind of mag pouches to buy. And don't make all the mistakes Dustin did. Save it for later. So enjoy this one. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on the show, man. Good to have you back. It's been a while since we've sat down and done one like in depth, but you've been on a couple times over the years for the Jeff Kirk Memorial match. Just kind of jumping in and out, but we're gonna dive deep here.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think I've jumped in on a couple of shows just when I seen you had a match and you were live or something. I jump in, say hi for a little bit, and then kind of go about my day and let you continue to do your job. So
Yeah,
that'd be nice.
which I always enjoy. And then of course we had you on when I visited JP Enterprises a couple years ago, and you and James Leffler. This is back when you were assembling rifles.
Yes, that feels like it was a long time ago, but it was really wasn't too long ago. But it so much has happened since then that yeah. But that was a cool experience for you to come in and see everything, and you got to sit down with Brian Payne and have
Yeah,
that conversation with him. That was a phenomenal podcast.
dude. Payne is legit. Like he's one of the most humble dudes out there, but like his breadth and depth of knowledge is just like unmatched.
Yeah, he's got that. The way he tells stories and then just the way he talks is when as soon as his mouth opens, everybody stops and just listens because it's gonna be a great story or very educational, whatever he says.
Yeah, for sure. And he does have the best stories too. It's great.
yeah.
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 Got to get Payne back on
For
the
sure.
show again. Well, so we're here to talk about a very specific topic, and we're going to take a little bit of a roundabout way to get there. So, couple months ago, I guess this is like back in June of 2019, Jay Christensen and I were shooting the DC Project team match, and he and I shared a hotel room. And after you're done shooting and everything, you grab dinner and you're hanging out, and just as things do, we started talking and BSing about shooting and the kind of things that we wanted to do in shooting. And one of the things that both of us had mentioned is that we'd never shot a match in heavy. And I love guns, so it's like, hey, there's a new opportunity to get a 308 rifle because we're both in Texas at the time, and the DC Project match was at Reveille Peak, which is the same place Texas 3-gun is. And so we came up with this idea that we just try to get as many people together as we could to shoot heavy division at Texas 3-gun, because you only need a 308 in that match, aside from your normal like TAC ops or limited gear, because the shotgun and the pistol are the same in their rule set. So not knowing anything about heavy, never having shot it, I think I've shot just a couple 308 rifles or 308 ARs in my lifetime. I was like, man, who do I know that can take me through this? That's shot a lot of heavy and has made the switch from TAC to heavy. So, boom, Dustin Sanchez, our expert of the day here.
Well, I don't know if I go as far as saying expert, but I definitely have been shooting heavy for about 3 years now, and I love it. And yeah, it's funny that you were talking about the 9mm being used in heavy, because you'll every now and then in a 3-gun, one of the 3-gun Facebook pages, you'll have some boomer come on and he'll complain whenever he sees that 9mm is being allowed in a heavy division, and say it's never been that way. And then you kind of go back and look at the match that Randy Luth had, the DPMS 3-gun match here in Minnesota. That heavy division actually started out with 308 and a 9mm, and the rules later changed where they were running a 45 and a pump shotgun.
No way.
So I feel like, yeah. So some of these guys that try to say they're old school and they want it to be a certain way, I think it kind of depends on where you started shooting 3-gun at.
Yeah.
But up here in Minnesota, it started out with a 9mm and heavy.
Dude, I'm changing it right now. We're calling it Luth rules. Luth rules heavy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I was kind of on that. Like when I got into heavy metal, it's cool because you're running a 45, and I could have got a double stack or a single stack, and I wanted to try to go, at the time I thought as OG as possible. So I went with like the single stack 1911, and have to have freaking 10 mags at least on you for an all pistol stage, and ran with the pump shotgun and threw my Spitfire AR on the 308 and just went out there and had fun. And it was a huge learning experience.
Yeah. Well, so let's kind of frame it a little bit. I guess for someone who's listening, if they're not familiar with like heavy metal or He-Man or whatever you want to call it division, traditionally it was it was like the M1, right? The M1A type division. This is back before we had like inexpensive consumer optics and people were basically shooting iron sights, right? So generally it was like a 308. And I think it started from that. This was before the AR-10 platform was really proven. And then you had a 12-gauge pump shotgun. Tube must not exceed the barrel length, which generally ended up being right around like 8 rounds in the tube, 1 in the chamber. And then a 45 ACP pistol with no more than 10 rounds in it, right? So that's why you had to have like 10 mags on you because you were limited on capacity.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it was based on like the technology of when I guess the cutting edge technology of when the division was formed. And then as we kind of got into like TAC optics and limited, we went to 5.56 or 2.23. Now we've got scopes. Now we've got red dots and things like that. And then heavy metal just kind of slowly lost participation because it wasn't on the cutting edge, right? That's kind of the way I see it. Do you see it that way as well?
I do, yeah. And whenever I went into heavy metal, it was more of a, JP has a LRP07 308 ultralight, so it's a 14.5 inch 308 AR-10 platform that weighs around 7.5 pounds. That I was like, dude, I would love. It would be so much fun to take one of these to a match and just shoot a match with it and just have fun. And so I had to borrow all the gear, and it was. When I went out there were guys, the pistol that I started out with was just like a Springfield single stack that I borrowed from Vilmar, and I just grabbed a Nova pump, and it was like,
well, because you came from TAC Ops, right?
So I came from TAC Limited.
Oh, okay. So you came from TAC Limited, so you had to do exactly what we're talking about now, is like try to figure out what gear to use for the division.
Yeah, because when I first started in 3-gun, I did TAC Ops, and then I started playing around with TAC Limited. But I still had to. It was all new gear, different holster, mag pouches. I had to go buy new mags for both the guns. Try to get a pump shotgun that was up and running and that you could quad load because quad loading was. It's still the thing, but it was kind of right there where it was pretty new. So I was like, well, I got to if I can quad load a semi-auto, I need to be able to quad load a pump. But it did. It felt like I kind of went back into the Stone Age compared to being in TAC Ops or TAC Limited. It was definitely different. I remember, the gear that I have now compared to the gear I had then for heavy was completely different. And even just trying to find single stack mag pouches took me probably 4 or 5 months to find some that I actually liked. And I had to order stuff, get it in, and be like, oh no, this is not going to work for me.
Oh man.
So I've got a bunch of mag pouches here that I don't like for single stack.
So you're going to save us a bunch of time trying to figure all this crap out then.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, especially if you're looking into heavy metal and you want to shoot traditionally with the single stack. There's a lot of stuff there, and same thing with the shotgun. But
right.
Yeah, in divisions like you were talking about with Texas 3-gun Championship, the division has changed a little bit, and you have the guys that are complaining about it. But I think overall it's great for the sport. There's a lot of guys that have 308s at home. And of course, if they're already shooting 3-gun, they have their semi-automatic shotgun sitting there, and they have a 9mm double stack of some sort sitting around. So it get a little bit more participation out there, and it cuts down on the cost when you can take out the 45 ammo at least.
Well, yeah, because
the
45
real expensive are 308. But
yeah, well, 45 ammo is expensive, and then you throw in the fact that now you've got to get like a 1911, and good luck finding one that runs every time. For competition. And then, so basically you're talking about like going to a custom gun builder and you're going to be spending double, right? So for me,
yeah,
I'm heavy curious. It sounds like fun. I just want to shoot the 308 rifle, but having just picked up a DVC 3-gun like 11 months ago, there's no way that I could justify buying a whole new pistol to shoot just a couple matches in 308, because there's even some matches out there that don't even have a heavy division. So for me, in my current situation in life, it doesn't make sense. But if you're only talking about like either getting one gun or using that gun that you normally use to shoot pigs or deer or something like that, and maybe just getting some extended base pads and different, and then swapping over your tack scope to it. Now we're talking about something that's kind of attainable, you know? So
exactly.
And then using the same shotgun, of course. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and like you said, I mean, a lot of guys have 308s in their safe. So they're really just looking at possibly changing an optic and, getting some mags. I definitely would recommend the D50 that's out, because that thing's just, there's nothing more fun than throwing 50 rounds into your rifle and shooting them off real fast with 308. That's just something everybody needs to experience once in their life, I'd say. But,
nice.
That's a good time.
Well, we're definitely going to talk about that, but one of the other things that so I was talking to James Leffler when we were at the Red October Kalashnikov Championship, and I was trying to pick his brain on like, okay, well, how am I going to build this 308? Because James, working in quality at JP Rifles, sees a ton of 308s coming through. So what he said was like, hey, since you're in media, we're just going to lend you an upper receiver assembly for the 6.5 Creedmoor you already have. So there's another way to get into it. Like if you've already got like, a precision gas gun or something that, you normally shoot 6.5 Creedmoor, now you can just build a new upper for it or buy a new upper for it. And then that's another cost savings as well. So now we're basically talking about like ammunition costs to get into it. So that's what appeals to me about this particular division. And then Dustin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you told me that Minnesota 3-gun changed the tri-gun rules and that they're going to be doing a similar thing.
Yeah, they did. So in 2018, they were running the rules were set up where you had to run a 45 caliber, and it was 2 on paper or 1 in the A zone, right? Then we all sat down, and not that I'm part of them, but I'm in the heavy division, so Joe Marr and those guys kind of called, talked to myself, they talked to Sean Nelson, some other guys, and we advocated to let them bring in 40 caliber for 2019 to see how that would set up, and they were allowed to run a double stack 40 caliber. They still had to put 2 on paper, and then the guys running 45 were limited to 10 rounds per mag. And you could get 1 shot in the AC zone. If you didn't get 1 in the AC zone, then you had to put 2 on paper. And there were some stages where 45 and 40 were really balanced. You couldn't tell the difference between if a guy was running, had 40 or 20 rounds of 40 cal and the other guy had 10 rounds of 45, just the way the stage was designed. But the all pistol stage, unfortunately, happened to be pretty much all falling still. And the guys with the 40 destroyed all of those guys with the 45. And after that, there was some more talking, and then they decided to change it to now where heavy optics and the tri-gun this year will allow you to run a 9mm pistol with your 308 and your semi-automatic shotgun.
Got it. So I haven't looked at both rule sets, but it sounds like gear is similar to what we're seeing in Texas 3-gun.
Yep, and for the guys that want to stay true to heavy or what heavy has been in the past couple of years here, the Minnesota 3-gun group does have another division for heavy irons, which is where you have to run I guess you could run a 1 power optic on there, and then it's a pump shotgun and a 45 caliber pistol.
Cool. Well, so that match in that venue is friendly to limited as well, because you really don't shoot past like what, 250, 300 yards.
Yeah, your farthest shot will be about 380, but that's going to be pushing it there too. So yeah, limited at this match it's for the tri-gun. It's a lot of fun.
Cool.
It's a good time.
Cool. Well, I dig it. I'm excited to be able to shoot this at least once, just to say I did, and I'm looking forward to that as well. But I have like no place to start with. So I know from like years of shooting AR-15s, and I knew this going into shooting 3-gun, that basically I would buy the cheapest ammunition possible for it, which was 55 grain, right? And
Yep.
that's just like a standard across the board. And then once I got into it and, started shooting targets that are farther away, out to like 600 yards, you realize, okay, well, I need a precision round as well for stages that require it. I experimented with 55 grain VMAX, 77 grain, 69 grain, not much on 69 grain, but then 75 grain. And that's kind of what I shoot a lot of now, just for economy's sake. But I have no idea what like the standard load is for a 308. Like, I have no basis of knowledge whatsoever. So I'm going to use my ignorance to teach the audience along with me here. So if you're starting from scratch and you've got your rifle, you want to shoot it for this specific purpose, and I guess we'll talk about the rifle to start with here. Like, what do I go to the store and buy?
So this part with the 308, I think, is probably the most what's the word I'm looking for, time-consuming part, because I got something right off the shelf right away, and it was like 169 grain, and that thing shot lights out. But I soon learned I don't need 169 grain projectile and 3-gun. I mean, our farthest shots maybe 600, 650 in 3-gun for the most part, and we're shooting targets sometimes the size of like a car door.
Yeah, so, and even then you're going to only have one or two of those shots, and everything else is going to be like 350 yards and in.
Yeah, so I felt like doing that was overkill. I mean, if I was shooting 308 and I wanted to go shoot PRS or a long-range match, I'd really be looking at that 160 grain. But I found with my rifle actually shoots 155s the best. So that's actually what I like to run. I run that for my short range, my up close, and I also run it for long range. So I'll just show up with one projectile, one round, and that's all I run. I have started to look at 110 grain, and I know Hornady was making them, and the 110 grain is for, I would say it's like your hoser round for the 308 guys. There's very little recoil. It's a fast moving round. It's fun to shoot. And so for, if you've got that stage where it's an all rifle stage and you've got to run through there and take a lot of shots up close, that 110 grain is awesome for that. It's really good. And then you can get something for that shot that's, 500, 600 yards if you have that. I do know that the 110 grain will reach out there all day, but the drop on that, depending on how you have it zeroed, it does get a little squirrely, and it does depend on the type of barrel you're running. So, like I said, on my 308, I'm running a 14.5 inch. The 110, the drop, I don't remember the exact numbers for that now because I played with that 2 years ago, but the drop was pretty significant, that my holdovers were super crazy for what I like, and trying to memorize targets from 350 out to 600 on a couple of stages, I was just like, dude, that's way too much work. I want to find a round that's just going to perform out of my rifle the best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got up to the 150s. I mean, I played with 110s. I played with some like 124s, some 130s. The 130s were cool. They were like a full copper. They were just rolled copper, and they were awesome rounds. And they performed a lot like the 155s that I run now. The only reason I don't run those now is because when I would go to a match that had steel, we'd be shooting steel targets out there, they got to the point where they were stopping me in the middle of the stage, because when the copper would hit that steel, it sounded like it was puncturing through the steel, and they thought I was running steel tip ammo, and they'd literally stop me in the middle of the stage and run a magnet on my ammo and then run all the way out to the target and check it. And it happened to me in 4 matches.
Wow.
And so I was like, all right, I'm literally done running this stuff. And it was cheap to run because it is.
Yeah, a complete round of copper sounds expensive, actually. So how is that cheap?
So ORM Tech was actually loading them, and they were cheaper than the 110 10 grains that he was loading at the time, and they were cheaper than the 169 grains that you were getting from Hornady.
Wow.
So they were, yeah, and it could have just been at that time copper wasn't as expensive. I haven't looked at them anymore since I quit running them. But the first time it happened to me was at Rocky Mountain, was out in Rocky Mountain on one of their long range stages, and I'm not going to say I was going to win that stage because I had to shoot against Tyler Payne there, but I was putting in a good run and they stopped me. And then when I went back and reshot it, reshoots don't ever go.
Yeah, got boned by the reshoot guys.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I run 155 grain from OM Tech. I love the ballistics of it, and I actually put on my rifle. I run a 300 yard zero. It's I zeroed at 25 yards, and then I trued it out to 300, and I run that just for the simple fact of my holdovers with that 155 grain are really good for me.
I gotcha.
So, but I would definitely recommend. I saw like Dylan Easley's been playing around with 2 different loads, and Jay Crillo, I think, at one point in time was playing around with 2 different loads. If I was really looking into this and I was just going to do it for one match, I would look at the Hornady 110 grain. They're going to perform really good, and then you could buy a couple of rounds for that long range target, get that rifle sight in just like you would for TAC Ops for your long range ammo. Get everything dialed in for that, and you'd be good. But I mean, that 110 grain is going to run out to 300 yards, no problem.
Got it. Yeah. So that was one of the specific questions I had. Is it, when you're shooting 308, is like the blaster stuff in TAC Ops, 55 grain, it's kind of junk once you get past like 200 yards, right? So it's what, 2 MOA accuracy or something, and it'll do better, obviously, out of better barrels. But then like the wind really blows it around. So like for precision, like you really need a better round. So I'm kind of getting the sense that in a heavy that you can run it that way, but you might be able to get away with doing 1 round for the entire match. Does that sound dumb, or does it sound like I'm on the right track there?
No, it sounds like, that's the right track. Like I said, I run 155s for all my matches all season long. So that's the only round I put through my 308. Now Keith Garcia went out and he shot actually in TAC Ops last year with his 308, and I think he ran a 9mm at Superstition, and he ran 110s that entire match, and there were a couple of shots out there that were like 550, and he just smoked it down with those 110s coming out of his pushed them out of his rifle.
Okay.
So you can get away with 110s.
Got it.
But I give people that, let people know, because some people will be like, oh, I still need that precision round, and so if you're not comfortable with the 110s, of course you can do that, but the 110s they're really good, especially if you've got a good shooting rifle. You're gonna be okay.
Yeah,
and they're moving too. I mean, they're moving out that 308 for 110 grain.
How fast are they going?
So
like ballpark.
I think Sean Nelson was getting them around 2850 out of his 16-inch 308. He was running some. Yeah, he's been pushing through his.
Yeah, that's been moving pretty good. Now, once you get into so you mentioned 155 and 169 grain projectiles as well. Now, do those slow down quite a bit?
Yeah, so out of my 14.5 inch, the 155s are moving around 2,500 feet per second.
Okay.
So they're pretty slow, and that's why I run the 300 yard zero, is so that at 400 yards, my holdover is actually on my first hash mark down on my razor.
Got it.
My 1-6 razor.
Now,
and so when I ran a 200, it was way different than that. And I didn't like having too big of a holdover.
I've talked to a lot of people that, or I shouldn't say a lot of people, a handful of people that shoot 308 and like that 300 yard zero for that very same reason you're talking about, like basically from 25 to 300 yards, you've got like what, a 6-inch cone or an 8-inch cone that you're dealing with.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's really nice. It's kind of like the guys that run a 200 yard zero with their 223. I find that it's very similar to that. Whenever I looked at the holdovers from whether if I'm running my Spitfire on my 308 or if I'm running my Razor 1-6. They both seem very similar to everything when I shot TAC Optics and TAC Limited.
I gotcha. Okay. And so we kind of talked about it a little bit already, but the D50 is like a new thing, and I guess it came out last year, something like that. The Magpul D50, yep. Which if you're not familiar with it, is basically a drum mag, and it holds 50 rounds of 308. So have you found that these all feed well out of those?
So I have two of them, and they feed really well out of my rifle. I have seen some guys. The only issue I've seen with the D50 so far is not all rifles will feed very well when you go prone with the D50, because you can monopod off the D50. I don't know if you can with the D60, because I haven't shot a D60 through a 223 prone. But on my 308, I can go prone and kind of monopod-ish off of the D50, and both of my drums run really well that way. I've talked to some other guys. I think Jay was saying his didn't run when he went prone through his.
So that's definitely something to test.
Yeah, if you're gonna do it, that'd be something I would go to the range and test, and I did that with mine when I got them, because I wanted to know. Like, I just put it in there at home one day, and I laid down. I was like, oh, this is almost perfect. This is about where I'd run my bipod if I had one on there. So then we went to the range, and I ran it through there, and I loved it, and I've used it that way in a couple of matches since then, and I was glad it worked. But I have heard other people having issues when they go prone with theirs.
Okay. All right, so that's definitely something to check if you're prepping for a match. Well, so the 5.56 D60 is the length of a standard 30 round 5.56 PMag, right? And so it's supposed to give you the same, distance off the ground as a standard 30 round PMag. What is the D50? You think it's the same as like a 20 round or 25 round?
It's very close to a 20 round. I'd say it's probably a little bit shorter than a 20 round, but it's very, very similar to a 20 round.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're a big fella, that might not work for you. You might want to choose like some 25s or something with a base pad to go prone off of.
Yeah. So like on a rooftop, I do not like to use the D50 off of a rooftop. I actually like to use my 25 round mags. And I have a coupler for those that I got from Springer Precision. So I can couple two 308 mags together.
I do like the couplers for going prone. Just gives you like a little bit extra. I like it a lot.
Yep. Now, for you guys that are going to just shoot one match, I have a little tip for you, and I learned this from Tyler Payne at Rocky Mountain.
Ooh.
This is before I found this coupler, and I've had a lot of people come up to me and they're like, I want that coupler, and I'm like, look, there's a cheaper way to do this. Find somebody that dips, and tell them when they get done with their can that you want it, and they're going to give you their dip can. Yeah, and get some duct tape, and you're going to duct tape that can in between your mags, and you duct tape them together, and you now have coupled mags that will run in your 308 with no problems.
I like that.
Zero problems.
That's super cheap. And then you're basically for two 25 round PMags, you're, $22 a piece MSRP instead of, I don't know, what is a couple are like $60 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. They get pretty spendy depending on where you find it. I found mine. Some guy was getting out of heavy metal, and I found mine and I got that from him. So nice. I got it for a really good. I think I paid $20 for it.
Oh man.
I was like, sweet. Yeah. It was a steal. But I keep that on I keep that on two 20 round mags most of the time. And there's been a couple times I've showed up to a match, and I always carry an empty can of snuff in my range bag and some duct tape. And if I look at a stage and I'm like, okay, I need this way, I just tape it together real fast and call it a day.
Oh, that's not bad. And yeah, and then you can switch back and forth between magazines. That's pretty cool. I like it. And it
worked out pretty good.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So
there's a little cheap, helpful hint for you guys.
So, so on mags, let's talk about that. So I found out when I shot a precision match in or using a 308 that having 20 round mags is not always a good thing. And a lot of times if you're shooting in an awkward position or you're shooting up or something like that, the magazine gets in the way. And we found that, sometimes 10 rounds, or actually a lot of the time 10 round mags was the right way to do it. Now, I don't think we're using bipods in Texas 3 guns. So do you see a reason to bring 10 round mags, or do you just stick with 20, 25s and the D50?
I carry 10 round mags on me just in case. But I did the same thing when I was in, TAC limited. I would carry 10 round mags on me just in case. I think this past year I used a 10 round mag once, and that was because I had to lay down in the back seat of a car and shoot, and I couldn't get my rifle to just one of the targets, the angle is at, I couldn't get the rifle where I wanted it to when I would lay down before I got in there, because we were starting in that position. So I laid down in there and I had a 25 round, or I had a 20 round in there, and I was like, no, that's not gonna work. So I changed them real fast. That was the only time I've used one. So I would say if you can find one that's cheap, or you and a buddy share one, take one with you just in case.
It's like having that,
for the most part.
It's like having that 120 round mag in your TAC gear that just sits there and sits there and sits there, and maybe once every 2 years you'll use it.
Yeah, I'm really bad about this too, is where I will load up, because I have two 10 round mags in my bag that I always carry with me, and I load them up with ammo, so if I need them on the go, I just grab them really fast. And I always forget to unload them because I never use them. And so I've shown up to a match and pulled it out. It's like, oh, this thing's been loaded for like 3 months now, because I haven't unloaded or loaded this mag since that last match. It's just been going from match to match to match loaded, and I've never used it. So
nice.
So that's how often I don't use them. But like I said, I'm one of those guys that likes to be prepared. If I show up to a match and I need that, I want to have it. And for me, there's not a whole lot of heavy shooters out there. Sometimes there's no heavy shooters in my squad at all. I'm the only one, so I have to have all my gear.
Yeah, so we've spoken with the match management of Texas 3 Gun, and Aaron Hayes said that he would go ahead and put us set aside some squads for all heavy, which would be pretty badass, right? Because when you're dealing with a bunch of newbies, it's like, can we share some gear here so it's not so damn expensive?
Yeah. So I've talked to a bunch of guys who've talked about showing up to a match where it was all heavy and doing that, and we all laughed because the deal with heavy, especially with your rifle, is the amount of targets that get broke.
Yep.
So that's my only fear, is like if I was running a match and I put all the heavy guys together, I feel like I'm just going to follow them around from stage to stage because they're going to be breaking the targets all the time. Yeah, I broke a Texas Star this year at the Trigun.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I broke. Yeah, so they had to bring in a whole new Texas Star, but I shoot with the ROs. So they're like, oh, well, we're glad this happened now.
Yeah, no kidding.
I was like, have fun with that. But yeah, I broke it in the middle of the stage.
Yeah, man. Well, when I was talking to Aaron, he said that he's like, we're gonna have to buy twice as many bolts and chains as we did last year, and keep them on hand for you guys, because there's 30 people signed up for heavy in Texas 3 Gun now, and I forgot to look at how many.
So awesome.
Yeah, I forgot to look at how many there was last year, but that is a significant increase.
Yeah, well, like I said, man, and like you were saying, everybody's got a 308 in their safe that they use for hog hunting or something. There's been a lot of 308s I've seen on prize tables that people have taken, but they don't have any use for it because they don't shoot heavy.
Yeah.
So they're like, one day I'll go hog hunting, or one day I may shoot a heavy match with it. And now with them bringing in the 9mm, it just opens that door up for all you guys to jump in there, and you're gonna have so much fun. Shooting heavy, especially shooting the heavy rifle, is a blast.
Yeah. So okay, well we've got the mags down. We talked about ammunition, and we kind of said that you prefer 300 yard zero. And again, I've heard that from at least two of my Colorado buddies that have shot some heavy as well. So what else do I need to know about shooting heavy, specifically rifle related?
Yeah. So for people that are going to shoot on, like maybe like for you, this is your only match you're going to shoot. You don't want to go buy mag pouches for your 308 mags because that's going to be expensive for one match. So a lot of guys already have like the 511 Apex or Apex jeans or like like shooter jeans, shooter pants, little, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So they have that set. They have those two back pockets on each side. And one of them, they designed it to fit like an AR mag or something like that in there. And for the longest time, the guys at 511 were like, yeah, that only fit a 223. So one day I went to the 511 store here in Minnesota and had a 308 mag. And I was like, look, if these fit in here, I'm going to walk out with five sets of these today. And I put them on. I put the mag in that back pocket. And because the Apex pants are a little elastic, it hung on. I mean, like that mag fit perfect in there. And like I jumped up and down. I did a little flip right there. It never fell out. So if you already have the Apex pants, you have two mag pouches built into your pants and you're set for your 308 mags.
Sweet.
And they'll hold a coupled mag perfect in there.
Oh yeah, that's important.
Yeah,
that's important.
Yeah. So like even with the can of snuff wrapped, taped around there, stuffed in there, you can do a dead sprint through a stage and that does not fall out.
So another little I guess hack or cheat that we're talking about here, since we're talking about shooting a one-time division. If you're into open division at all, I believe it was Scott Green that was telling me that the Vepr magazine pouches, if you run magazine pouches, a lot of guys run the clips, but the Vepr mag pouches will actually fit a 308 magazine as well.
Oh yeah, that's sweet. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. And if you end up on my squad for the Texas 3 gun, I've got I think two of them here for that I'll have to put on some ELS and share them around.
Yeah, that's cool. I wouldn't have even thought about that for the open guys.
Yeah, well,
hey, I have.
Go ahead, bud. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, talking about heavy, because every match I've went to, I have to read the rule sets.
Yeah.
Because heavy rules are different at every match. Very, very seldomly do I shoot a match where they have the same rule set. What are the rule sets at the Texas 3-gun championship for heavy, for the rifle?
Oh man, so it's Texas 3-gun specific rules, right? So it's not like it's based on any other rule set. They have their own rules, which is it's kind of unique in that respect, but it's also kind of refreshing because they have the ability to move on the fly and stuff. But I like that the way they have it set up, because now we're kind of sliding in here. So basically, it's like the big overall thing is like firearms must be factory configuration, can't shoot prototype. Handgun is, practical, tactical carry style. And then I think it is 9mm or larger. So you can shoot 40 or 45 if you want. But you don't necessarily, that's not a good idea. But then let's see. Electronic sights, optical sights, not kosher, no compensators, so you must use iron sights. Let's see, magazine length is 170 millimeters in single column mags or 140 in staggered. Let's see, and then rifle, no more than one optical sight on the rifle. Supplemental magnifier may be used with the permitted optical sight, provided the magnifier does not contain an aiming reticle, and it has to stay on the rifle the whole time. So that's the 3x magnifier some people like to use for flip ups. Right. Supporting devices like bipods, those are prohibited. Compensators are the same rules: 1 inch diameter, 3 inches long. Minimum 30 caliber. This is kind of funny. Minimum 30 caliber, 300 blackout, 300 whisper excluded. So several people have given Aaron a hard time of hey, so I can shoot 338 in this whole thing. And so he may be updating that soon. They actually have a power factor of 320, so I don't know how all that stuff weighs in on the rounds that we were just talked. But then shotgun, basically tube mag, no optical sights, no bipods, no compensators, no speed loading devices, and then 9 rounds at the beginning of the stage. So basically tac ops shotgun there.
Yep. Okay. What about, is it on paper with your rifle? Is it 1 on paper or is it 2 on paper?
Let's see. Heavy optics will require 1 hit inside the scoring area to neutralize with rifle.
Nice. I've shot a match where your 45 was 2 on paper and your 308 was 2 on paper.
That sounds expensive.
And that was dude, I was gonna say it's the most expensive match I've ever shot.
Now, the reason that we put 2 on paper on normal tac ops is because it's quicker to just throw 2 rounds at a piece of paper than to put 1 in the A zone. Now, is that different in heavy? Do you find yourself? I mean, is there any situation where you would just fling 2 rounds at a piece of paper and move on?
There are, like, if I'm looking at a stage and it's not real pistol heavy, for that part of the stage, and I can just run through there, and I don't have to, really go for my A zone. I'll hose it down and just put 2 on paper if I don't have to do a whole lot of mag changes. Right? If I'm gonna do 1 mag change, I have plenty of area to run to do that mag change, then I'm gonna put 2 on paper and just go. There are other stages that are an all pistol stage where it is a lot of steel in some areas and then paper in other areas, and you've already. I think I have 10. There was a match. I think I had 13 mags on me because and I shot all alphas just in case. So yeah, in that stage, a lot of guys in heavy were aiming, and we were blowing a lot of pasties off of certain targets because we would just muzzle stamp them.
Right.
And because just try to make sure you got your alpha and saved some money and everything. So yeah, so it gets a little crazy out there.
So how about for rifle? Are there any cases where you would just throw 2 308 rounds on a piece of paper?
No, I can't think of a match where I'm going to throw 2 on paper at all.
Okay.
Not unless they specifically tell me, because if you're good with your rifle and your zeros, you're just going to put 1 on the paper and just run. And especially with that, you probably won't even aim at some of the targets as you're running through the stage. You just pretty much point and just keep running and pull that trigger. And you'll know when you hit it. Like I've literally seen Sean Nelson last year shoot a target and he was on a dead run and he kept running and shot again at the target, because when you shoot it, I mean, there's a huge hole in that paper target. Like you see it right away. Yeah. So it's so easy to call your hits that you're like, oh, I got that guy, and you just keep running. So it's fun.
Last year, Texas 3 Gun had this really cool stage that was by the water of the river, and they had rifle paper as soon as you pick the rifle up, and like the 308 dudes, they shot. I mean, everybody shoots through the paper, and then the rounds land in the water. But when the dudes were shooting 308, when their rounds landed in the water, you knew for sure what was happening. Like it was pretty impressive. I got some really good pictures of that too.
Sean Nelson and I, we were just at a match, indoor match, and there was a guy, he didn't know Sean was running 308, and he went to RO Sean, and the stage started right up against the wall. And before I could tell the guy what was going to happen, the buzzer went off, and Sean shot, and that guy knew right away that that was not a 223. That was a 308. He took about 5 steps back, and I've seen that happen on outdoor matches where the RO's right on a 308 shooter, a heavy shooter, as they turn a little bit and shoot, and that you catch that blast. They know.
Yeah,
it's fun to watch ROs jump too.
It's pretty unmistakable.
It's kind of like the open guys. When they run the big JP recoil eliminator on there.
Yeah,
and they turn and they take that shot, and that RO all of a sudden realizes what's going on. and they definitely get away from that thing. Yeah,
oh man,
it's fun.
Yeah, when my pal Mike Griswold and I were shooting the Vortex Extreme, so he was shooting a 308 with a JP 3-port comp, and I was shooting a 6.5 Creedmoor with the recoil eliminator on there. And basically, every time we get up, we're like picking dust out of our eyes and our ears and our noses and stuff. And because you're shooting at the same time, it's like shooter A goes, then shooter B goes, and shooter A goes, and shooter B goes. And so halfway through the match, he's like, that comp's not very pleasant to be next to. And I'm like, oh, you think yours a walk in the park, buddy? You're shooting a 16-inch. It's even closer to me.
Yeah. I don't know. Comps are cool.
Yeah, we had a good laugh about that one, but I was like, hey, maybe next year we'll get suppressors. What do you think about that? That sounds like fun.
Yeah, team match, I would definitely say suppressor would be awesome if you're, when you're next to somebody.
Well, especially in that type of match where it's basically like, do you get the hits and here's your time. There's no timer like a USPSA or 3-gun timer, so you don't need to catch the shots. So might as well.
Yeah,
I think that'd be worth it.
You're talking about pistols, and it wouldn't be worth somebody shooting a 45 at the Texas 3-gun championship.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Sanchez, no relation, we're just good friends. He has a double stack 45 2011.
Yeah,
and I think you should try to talk him into shooting out there.
Yeah, so I think I missed my opportunity because last club match out here, he was out there and he was showing me talking to me about it, and I don't know what happened. I guess we didn't catch up to shoot it, but yeah. So here's one problem I have with heavy as a whole. It's like technology has progressed, right? So we somehow are stuck in the 80s where we're limited to 10 rounds. It's like, bro, we can fit 15, 17 in a 140 millimeter mag. Let's do that. And then 45 would be much more fun to shoot.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, Bob's got that 2011. That's a double stack 45. And that thing, I asked him why. I was like, why'd you spend the money and get a double stack? He's like, yeah, you never know. One day they may let me run a double stack. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be so mad if that ever happens because I spent all this money on a single stack and now I'm going to be screwed.
That'll just become a carry gun then.
We'll probably put it in safe. It's heavy.
I think that same time that I came up and we did the podcast at JP, I went over to Arms and Arms when Amax used to work there, and he let me play with they were a little slow, so he's like, whatever you want to play with, and so I'm like, okay. Arms and Arms, for those of you who've never been there, it's a gun store, but unlike gun stores you usually go to, where it's not like they have 35 Glocks for you to choose from. They have those 35 Glocks, but they also have cool CZ Accu Shadows and STI pistols and 10 folios. They have cool competition stuff too. So I was having Amax pull everything out of the case, and one of them was this 6-inch DVC something or other. I think it was a limited, maybe, I don't know, but it was 45 ACP double stack, and it was 6-inch, and it was all black. It was there is no practical purpose for this thing whatsoever. It doesn't fit into any game, but I want that, and I want it now. And it's the only thing bigger in the store was the Desert Eagle, which I also wanted to take with me as well. But but that STI for some reason stuck out in my head as that thing is so clown shoes. It has no practical purpose whatsoever, but I want one.
I know. You're just talking about it. I'm like, God, that'd be sweet.
Right?
Yeah. And now nowadays with the heavy going the way it's going, I would have zero purpose to even have that. But it would be cool to pull out of the safe when your friends come over and be like, dude, check this out. Yeah,
for sure. And I think eventually, someday it could get to that point where a heavy could allow double stacks, but I don't know. But it's just one of those barbecue guns,
Yeah, no, I get it. I have a question for you though.
Yeah.
What optic are you gonna run on your rifle?
So I think I'm just gonna take the Razor 1-6 that I normally use, and it's a mill reticle. I'm gonna take that off and throw it on the heavy.
Okay, nice.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I run the 1 to 6. I like it. I have seen people run different optics on there, and the recoil does knock some optics off.
Okay.
They lose their zero from time to time. So, but I've had amazing luck with my Vortex here, and I've ran the Spitfire in the 1 to 6 on here. I've actually have a 3 to 18 after I want every now and then to check for grouping, check my grouping out of it. But I've got so many rounds to this thing now that I'm really paying attention to my grouping that I'm getting out of this rifle.
Right. Well, so that is a good segue into the next topic I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about like tuning a 308 rifle specifically for 3-gun. So, if you're familiar with 3-gun rifles in the 5.56 category, you know that we're not just grabbing like a normal just mil spec standard rifle off the shelf and then going with that. Like we'll lengthen the gas system. We like it as long as possible, so that can be a mid-length or a rifle length depending on what length of barrel we have. We've got the adjustable gas blocks, like we were talking about the JP 3-port comps. Those are really great for 5.56 rifles. I like the lightweight bolt carrier group. I like the silent capture spring, and I tune the gas just so it holds open on the last round, and then otherwise I'll get it as light as possible, still being reliable every single round and ejecting it. Just a little bit on a higher gas side for me. So if I'm setting up a 308 rifle, are some of those principles going to be the same when I go to a 308, or I mean, I guess walk me through, like, how would I set up that rifle how would I tune that rifle?
I would say everything you just said you would do for your 223, you're going to do for your 308. However, on the 308, I did open up my gas system a little bit more. I want to make sure, so you find with what I've seen a lot at matches in the heavy division, I've seen a lot of guys have issues getting the brass to eject out of their rifle. And I don't know what's going on with other guys' rifles, because a lot of times I'm standing on the sideline watching them, or I'm the next shooter right behind them. So I don't really get a chance to ask them what was going on. So when I built my 308, I run the JP adjustable gas block, and I set my gas block to JP factory settings, so I could tune it a little bit more, but I focus more now that I've been shooting this 308 for so long. I have found that I want to focus more of my attention in my buffer system. So, the JP SES is what you can run. We have two different divisions or two different models. We have a SES-10 and a SES-10H for heavy, and I run the heaviest SES I can get. And
now,
I actually
now those have like
tungsten
weights on them, right? Instead of steel weights to make them heavier. Is that correct?
Yes. So you can run steel weights. You can run tungsten weights. I started out with just I started out with the original SES from JP, which had two steel weights on it for the 308. And then I put two tungsten on it. Then I pulled that off and I went with the new updated one, which was running 3 weights on there. And I run all tungsten weights on mine. I have my SES as heavy as possible. And I even run a variable mass carrier that JP sells. It's an aluminum carrier, but it has weights on it like our SES does. And that helps with bolt bounce, because a lot of 308s get a lot of bolt bounce. So with me having the weights on the variable mass, whenever the carrier comes forward, that mass acts like a dead blow hammer on the back of that carrier and make sure I don't get any bolt bounce. So in theory, if we're really hosing it down, my splits should be faster with my rifle, but I have found that the recoil or perceived recoil that I'm getting out of my rifle it's not there because of the way it's set up. So the SES is the heaviest it can be, and my bolt carrier is lighter on the front end and heavier on the back end. Now you can get an ultralight, or not ultralight, but you can get a low mass carrier through a couple different companies, of course, for the 308 that I definitely would recommend. Got it.
And so, like
I don't know if that just confused everybody or not, but
yeah, I don't know. So I understood that, but I've had to become familiar with the JP product line. So let's start like front to back on the recoil system or on the gas and recoil system. So you're running like a 14.5-inch rifle, right?
Yep, 14.5-inch pin and weld.
And is it mid-length gas?
It is mid-length, yep.
Okay. And so then the muzzle device you have pin weld on there, is that like a JP 3-port comp?
So I actually, because it's a pin and weld, I actually have the 2-port on here because we did not have the 3-port at the time. I will be upgrading it this next season to the 3-port to do that. I do like the way the 3-port shoots way better.
Got it. So if you were doing it today, you do the 3-port.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But like I said, when I did mine at the time, we didn't have the 3-port.
Got it. So it's kind of hard to change when it's welded on there.
Yeah, and I've looked at it and I was like, I could pull this apart, but if I mess something up drilling out that pin and weld, I have to buy a whole new barrel. And I'm really trying to test this barrel to see how much life I can get out of it before I have to change it out.
Yeah, and it's just not worth it for, something you're going to end up changing out as a serviceable part later, right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So you start off with a compensator. Again, for like Texas ray gun rules, it's going to be that 1-inch diameter by 3 inches long, and both the 2-port and the 3-port fall in there. You like the 3-port. Coming back from there, the adjustable gas block. Use JP clamp-on adjustable gas block.
Yep. So the GS90 is a 2-piece gas block. So you can put it on there. So it works great if you're going to run a pin and weld or anything like that. It is adjustable. It's a detent adjustable. So every eighth of an inch turn there, you'll feel the detent in there, and that's your next position.
I like that, by the way. So I've got one of those in my 14.5 223 that I'm shooting, and you can feel the detent as you're adjusting the gas. I love that because you know where you're at, and it doesn't wobble around on you while you're trying to tighten it down.
Yep. No, they're really nice. I've had a lot of guys that I've talked to have actually changed over to those. They like having that positive feel about it, and then they only have they never have to worry about anything stripping out on them if they do something wrong or anything. So it works out really nice for them. Yeah,
thumbs up on that. Okay, so then coming back from there, now we're getting into like the bolt and the bolt carrier group. So you run the lightweight carrier, you run the JP enhanced bolt, the lightweight carrier with 2 tungsten weights on there. Is that right?
Yes. So it's an aluminum bolt carrier that has 2 tungsten weight or 2 steel. This one actually has 2 steel weights on the back of it. Yeah. Sorry. Yep. Steel. So we're trying to keep the weight down on the carrier just like you would in 3-gun, so we can help with the perceived recoil or the felt recoil, depending on who you're talking to and who's listening here. But because the carrier is so light, when it's coming back and then it goes forward, like I was saying, in the 308s, they get a lot of bolt bounce.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to get rid of that bolt bounce. So those tungsten weights on the back, they're like free floating around the carrier. So there's a little O-ring in between them. So it gives them a little. Yeah.
So now they've got the inertia and then they smack it back into battery.
Yeah, exactly.
Got
so
it.
that helps with the bolt bounce. So they work great for that.
So now what you're talking about the dead blow hammer feel makes sense to me. That's perfect.
Yeah. So it's just like a dead blow hammer hitting it on the back end, and they're awesome. I think the technology actually came from getting something that would run great with when the guys are running a suppressor and stuff like that on their rifle. The variable mass really came into effect there, and then just happened to be playing with one for this 308 and fell in love with the way the felt recoil, perceived recoil was for this rifle. And then from there, for the last adjustment I made, and I played around with this one this entire past year, was the SES. Mm-hmm. The silent capture system in my rifle.
So for people, if they don't have a context on that one, it basically removes the normal buffer and buffer spring that you have in an AR-15 or an AR-10 style rifle, and it replaces it with like a one-piece unit that that sits in your your receiver extension. I was gonna say buffer hole. I'm like, buffer hole isn't the right word.
Buffer tube.
Buffer tube. There we go.
The buffer tube.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Goes into the buffer tube, and like you were saying, for the guys at home that aren't familiar with this, a lot of times when you charge your rifle or you're shooting your rifle, you get that cheese grater sound, a little bit of a vibration in your cheek when you're shooting. The silent capture system, silent capture spring actually removes that cheese grater sound and a little bit of that vibration in the rifle.
And for me, that never really bothered me because like I always thought like, well, this is a unique characteristic to the AR-15, and that's just how it is. And so like this is what we're doing. We're shooting AR-15s, and that's going to be there. But then our mutual friend Travis Vogel was like, you got to try the SCS, and actually sent me home with one to borrow. And I tried the SCS in my rifle. I was completely blown away by the feel of it. Like the sound doesn't particularly bother me. I know it bothers a lot of people, but not me. But the feel of it is what I like, and it just completely changed the rifle. So it has a whole new feel to it. So if you haven't tried one, like find a buddy that's got one and try it out, or find me. I've got them in my rifles. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'm with you. Whenever I wasn't at JP when they were introduced, and everybody's talking about them, I'm like, I mean, I can't tell what you guys are talking about in my, when I shoot my rifle. I'm like, I don't get it. And then I put one in my rifle and I shot it, and I was like, oh, I'm ruined.
Yeah,
I have to go buy one now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's exactly what I did.
And now when I go shoot somebody else's rifle, I can tell. But being at JP, we're playing with rifles all the time, and when I was building them, you're charging them and stuff. So now I grab a rifle and I charge it. I can tell right away without the sound. I can tell from the feel if they have an SES in there or not.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like it, when you charge the rifle, it does feel a lot smoother because, like you're saying, like that cheese grater sound. Well, that sound comes from something, and it's the spring scraping on the inside of the receiver or the buffer tube. So, it completely eliminates that. It's pretty fancy piece. If you haven't checked it out, jprifles.com they've got photos and stuff like that there. You can check it out. But so if you're not into like the aluminum carrier and the dead blow hammer, you can go with the low mass operating system, which is basically a lightweight bolt carrier group for the 308. And then of course, like we were talking about with the SCS, you want that. And Dustin, you've got yours tuned to like the nth degree.
I do. I've changed. So the SES, we have at JP, we have different spring weights for them. We have different actual like sliders. So there's a tungsten slide weight on there, or a steel little weight that can go on there. And then of course they wrap around the slider, and they're pinned on there with a snap ring and O-rings in between them. So the masses are not actually hitting each other because they've got that O-ring in between them. And I have literally went in and fine-tuned my SES to shoot exactly the way I want it to shoot, given the ammo that I run through my rifle.
Nice. Yeah, and that's another good point there is like you got to, especially with 308, because like it seems like there's such a wide difference between cartridges and 308 that you got to tune it for your rifle and the ammunition you like.
Yeah, well, I mean, what they got, I think somebody was saying they were running 175 grain or something like that. They were going to try to push that through their 308 this year in 3-gun. And then you had, in the same comment, you had somebody saying they were going to run 110 grain through theirs. Yeah. So, I mean, there's 60 grains difference between two guys' rifles. And then you're looking at weight too, right? So you have guys that run an 18-inch 308, 16-inch 308. I'm running a 14.5-inch, which I will be SBRing this particular 308 and turning it into a 13-inch 308.
Oh my!
So once I do that, I will be going through the rifle, and more than likely I will be changing my SES combination up to fine tune my rifle again. And I've told a lot of people I love the gas block. I love an adjustable gas block because I can get it, I can fine tune it there. But I actually like to keep that opened up because when you're traveling all over the nation, and the atmosphere is changing. I've been to JP's Blue Steel Ranch the past 2 years in a row, and that's like 4,000 feet above sea level, and then you go shoot Rocky Mountain, which is close to 6,000 feet above sea level. You start having some issues with your rifles if you've got it running right on just right. If it's right on that line, you start playing with weather, temperature, and the atmosphere. I've seen a lot of rifles go down, so I like to keep my rifle opened up a little bit more, and then I was able to fine tune it through the SES. So I know I have enough gas to move anything.
That's a really good point. I've seen a lot of guys who are well known for having fast trigger fingers and really light recoiling rifles have their rifles go down on the first or second morning of a match. When it's maybe 30 degrees colder than where they came from, and it's the morning, so there's a lot of moisture in the air or something like that. So yeah, when you tune the gas port, you want to err on the side of caution. Tune out some of it. I mean, of course it always depends on the barrel, right? So like a lot of manufacturers' barrels will tune theirs for I guess like military applications where there's a big ass gas port because they want it to run when there's sand in it and when you can't clean it and things like that, where we're talking competition here. So we have a little bit more leeway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you make a really good point there. There's a lot of people that have regretted a low gas gun.
Yeah, no, I made that mistake too. Whenever I first got into 3-gun, that's the thing you do, right? I'm going to get an adjustable gas block on here. Now I'm going to fine tune it through there, and I found that if I just fine tune my rifle through my SES, that it's something I can easily, because I'm just going for that perceived recoil, that felt recoil at that point, and so I can do a lot of it there, and my rifle's always running, and I'm lucky that I work at JP and I've had the opportunity to get some parts and stuff like that. So I usually carry a spare SES around with me and spare bolt and stuff like that, just in case. If I ever get to a spot where I feel a little uncomfortable with how my rifle may perform at an area, I can always change the SES or change the weights and make them lighter for my SES if I needed to real fast. But I can also just open up my gas block a little bit more too, and still have some of the same feel, from my recoil that I have.
Yeah, that's great.
Another thing I have. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's a great thing about having that level of familiarity with your rifle is knowing what it needs in different situations rather than waiting for it to malfunction and then troubleshooting it from there.
Right. Yeah. I think when you start hanging out with, I've been lucky to hang out with, Josh Fralick and Jake Latola, Nathan Payne, Brian Payne. A lot of these guys, I've spent a lot of time training with them, training underneath them, learning from them. So I've been pretty blessed to learn from some of their mistakes as well, to be able to okay, I really need to spend some time on my rifle and learn it a little bit more here and there. And I think that's something that just over time people that are in 3-gun or any type of shooting, actually, a little bit more experience out there, they start to change their stuff around and realize that, this is let's get our rifle tuned for the way we shoot and the way our body can handle it and what ammo we're running. So
yeah, totally agree. All right, so I think we talked about the gas and the recoil system front to back. Is there anything else you want to add to tuning a rifle?
Well, I always like to talk about triggers, but triggers are such a thing. It's different for everybody. I know a lot of guys in 308 run a little heavier of a trigger just because the primers in 308s are a little bit harder.
Oh, that's good to know.
So my trigger is at JP spec, so it's breaking at 3.5 pounds for a 308, and that's been when I came from my 223 to my 308. That was something at first that bothered me because I could feel that it was heavier. And granted, that's because at the time I was building rifles at JP, so I was I'd fill in a trigger. I was putting triggers in 223s all day long, and then I would get behind a 308, and I was like, "Oh, that's a little heavier than what I'm used to." But now, even my 14.5 inch runs the same trigger springs and everything that my 308 does, because I've become more comfortable with that trigger, and I like the way it breaks and everything. So that's just something. Depending on what you're doing in your 308, I would assume it's going to run good. But I would say whatever ammo you're going to get, make sure you're going out there and you're putting some rounds to it and testing to make sure that hammer will get the primer to ignite.
Right.
Or
that's a really good point.
Call Jake or call Jake Latola and he'll tell you what trigger you should run, I guess, or Jay Carrillo.
Are you aiming at the Hyperfire? Yeah, because they got the extra little springs on the hammer. Those are pretty badass. I've got one of my 5.56. I like them.
Yeah, they always talk about that whenever I bring that up to us. That's why I brought that up. Jake always says it with a smile on his face when he's looking at me, and all in good fun and spirit. So I gotta give him credit for their stuff.
I asked him one time, like, no cameras, no mics. I'm like, dude, why do you like that Hyperfire? He says, because science, Dave. And I was like, oh, okay. That's well, see you later.
And you can't fight science, right? I mean,
science
is science.
Yeah, I mean, the joke there is that Jake himself is an engineer. So, yeah, yep. I mean, he's obviously evaluated it, and that's what he's chosen. So, well done.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and they were talking about science. And the guy's like, are you going to fight science? And I was like, I cracked up laughing as I was listening to it. Because I was like, yeah, I mean, God made a good point.
Yep, can't fight science. Okay, so the last thing that I have on my list, and then you can tell me if there's anything that I'm missing and that I need to look at, is we've talked about this is actually the first thing on my list, and I forgot to ask it, but we've talked about several different lengths of barrel, and I know a lot of times, especially in TAC, it's like a personal preference. Like I've always liked the 18-inch rifles. Because you can get a rifle length gas system and it makes it like super soft recoiling. This year I went ahead and did a 16-inch rifle, and it's a mid-length gas, and I noticed a difference, but I think I really like that, and I'm probably going to be shooting. I guess for the foreseeable future I'll be shooting 16-inch rifles, but and then you of course mentioned 14.5 for your 308. You're going to make it a 13. Like what is the ideal, or is there an ideal, or is the science settled on that, or is it personal preference again?
I think when it comes to barrel length, there's a lot of personal preference. For 3-gun and for the targets that we have, the presentation, the size, with a 308, I think for somebody, let's say somebody's wanting to get into it, I would probably recommend the 16-inch, just because it's kind of like in TAC Ops, it's kind of the best of both worlds. You get a little bit more length out of it, but it's still kind of short for some of the bay stages. So you're not scared to go shoot a long range match, or like just an entire bay style match. But then again, with the fact that you can run, there's a difference of 60 grains in the different types of ammo you can run. I think you'll be okay with whatever you get. But if you're new to it, I'd definitely say check out a 16-inch. I went with the 14.5-inch because of weight. I'm naturally a smaller guy. I try to make up a lot of my stuff if I can run. Because some of these guys they can just, when I come from TAC Limited, some of these guys like Nathan Payne and Riley Croft, those guys are just smoking with their pistols and with their rifles or shotguns. So I need to try to make up any space I can. So I wanted to try to get something that was a lot lighter, that I could really maneuver around very well for my size. And I was worried about the long range targets until I started shooting some longer range targets with it, and this rifle was performing extremely well. But when Sean went to get his, I recommended to him like a 16-inch as well. It gives you the best of both worlds. So I'd have to say, though I run a 14.5, I'm going to a 13-inch. I would say a 16-inch for somebody getting into heavy would be perfect.
It's probably a good compromise, right?
And that's just kind of how I look at it. Brian Payne runs an 18-inch in his 3-gun heavy. I'm pretty sure Nathan Payne would run an 18-inch in there. They like to have the longer barrels, longer gas system. And Nathan's talked to me a couple of times about the makeup shot on a long range target is faster with an 18-inch than it would be with like a 14.5-inch. And they've got a whole science behind it. Him and Jake. I just sit over here with my 308 now saying, I'm just going to run my 14.5-inch and call it a day.
I've got a 14.5-inch, I guess I call it my truck gun. It's my home defense gun, but I went as short as possible for maneuverability, right? And that was the shortest I could get while pinning a regular flash hider, which was an A2, and make that 16 inches in length. Now, if there was no legal minimum on a barrel, which of course is 16 inches for people that don't know, if there was no legal minimum, I don't know, I'd probably go even shorter on that for my truck gun. And then, I've seen AMAX shoot, 500-yard targets with, I don't know, what, a 10.5 or 12.5 gun in 5.56.
Yeah.
So, but, for me, when you're talking about the difference between like a 10-inch and an 18-inch, like let's find somewhere in the middle, because I want the velocity, especially in this game, in its modern version where shit's really far away. But if we're talking about, like a all bay match or something, yeah, let's go short. Let's go short as possible.
Yeah.
Because now we're talking about speed or something like that. So
yeah. Now I have seen a huge difference in velocity from my 14.5-inch to a 16-inch 308.
Oh, really?
It was there was quite a bit difference there, but it wasn't enough. If you were shooting, if 3-gun had targets out to 800 yards, I would 100% would not run a 14.5-inch. I would be stuck on a 16-inch, if not an 18-inch. But there's just not too many matches that can really push it out there on a whole bunch of targets, right? Like you were saying earlier, you may have a match that has two targets out there in the entire match, and I don't see there being that big of a difference in that velocity for 2 targets. That's gonna, I'm not gonna lose an entire match on. I mean, you could lose an entire match on 2 targets, but I feel confident enough that I'm not going to, if I'm going to lose the match, it's not going to be that I lose the match on those 2 targets. I'm going to lose the match throughout the entire match, a couple, stage here, stage there.
Yeah.
But there was a big enough velocity difference that that's kind of why I was like, 16 inches going to be pretty nice for you.
Okay. 16 inches it is.
Yeah. But I will, on a base style match, man, you get that 14.5 moving through there, and you get a bunch of 308 guys run 18-inch rifles. There's a huge difference when you're moving through base style matches.
Yeah, I mean,
it depends on the match you're going to go shoot, I guess.
Yeah, well, so in the specific context we're talking about here, I guess Texas 3-gun. There's, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 bays. I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference, but you're definitely going to have to. You're going to have a whole stage where you're going to have you're shooting from a rock onto a hill and shooting a shitload of long range targets. And then another stage where you're shooting a bunch of long range targets too. So, maybe don't want to go to the 14.5, maybe stick with the 16.
Yeah. 16 would be nice for those, I remember I shot the Vortex shooter source match a couple years ago.
Yep.
And there were a lot of targets out there that, even though I'm really familiar with my 14.5-inch, after a while I was like, all right, there's a lot more long range targets out here than I was expecting. I would have probably wouldn't have minded having a 16-inch or an 18-inch.
Yeah. There are a ton of targets, long range targets at Vortex shooter source match.
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah. Hey, that was the first match that I ever shot where when I got to that match, I forgot to read the rules, but I was like, oh, whatever, I'll just figure it out when I get there. So I got to the match, I read the rules, and it was 1 shot on paper with your 45 anywhere.
Nice.
And that was dude, I was like, oh, this is fantastic. It was one shot on paper with your rifle too. It was just the greatest thing because I didn't have to do as many mag changes. It was great. Just side note there.
Well, especially when you're shooting your single stack 45. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Good stuff. All right, man. Well, I think all my questions are answered. Is there anything that you can think of that that I haven't asked you that I need to be paying attention to when switching from TAC Ops to 308?
No, I think we went over the gear, went over ammo, went over the targets if there's one on paper or whatever, mags and pouches, going prone with the D50 to make sure that goes. Your zero. Yeah, no, I'm just going through all my notes. I think we're good, man.
Okay, great. All right, man. Well, so before we part here, when we talk about heavy, like you said, there's a lot of guys that weigh in, and one thing that I love to do is the people that weigh in on arguments, I'll look them up on Practice Score. And so I see that the people with the biggest opinions about heavy generally don't actually shoot heavy in any matches. So you shoot heavy. Let's talk gear wise. Like, what do you think is the ideal heavy metal or He-Man or whatever division you want to call it, the ideal heavy 3-gun setup from rifle, pistol, shotgun? Let's talk about those. What do you think? If you could wave a magic wand and you could have your own match, what would it look like?
Well, I guess I mean, if I'm looking and my attendance is going to be good, and I'm going attendance base, it's going to be a 9mm pistol.
Okay.
If I want a large attendance.
So that's basically the future of the division then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't like saying that because I love the aspect of the 45. But when I look at the future of heavy metal, it's a 9mm. And I've tried to do everything I could to avoid that, but it is going there. And to get the sport to grow and to keep that division growing, it's going to be a 9mm. So if I could wave my wand and I could still have 30 plus attendants show up, it would be a pump shotgun, a single stack 45, and a 308.
Nice. So a traditionalist at heart, but a traditionalist at heart, but a pragmatist in the brain.
Yeah, yeah.
I like it.
And maybe one day we'll have it where, and I do like the trigun rules. They say if you want to go true, go with the way everybody thinks now with heavy, they have a division for that. And there's usually not a lot of people, but there's usually 13 people that show up to shoot with a pump, a 45, and a heavy iron rifle.
Trigun gets a surprising amount of people. Yeah, for sure. Trigun gets a surprising amount of people shooting heavy for a match that does not seem to be heavy friendly, right? Like when I think heavy, I think shit really far away. I don't think okay, this is let's go shoot a bay match, but yeah, for some reason they get it done. So not bad.
Yeah, I think there's usually 30, 35 people that show up to shoot two different divisions in heavy.
Yeah.
So two divisions together. Yeah. There's about 30, 35 people here. So it's really fun. But I'm so true to heavy that I've shot one match with the 223 in the past 3 years. And that was when it was Generation 3 this year because I was preparing for the tactical game. So I wanted to run all of my tactical game gear. But other than that, I shot the Generation 3 gun match last year with my heavy rifle, my 45 single stack, and my semi-auto shotgun. So that's how much I love heavy. I will call the match director and ask him if I still run my heavy gear.
And that's why we had you on the podcast, bro. You're the evangelist.
Well, I appreciate any time I can talk to you, and definitely appreciate coming on the show.
Yeah, dude, it's fun. I really appreciate your sharing the knowledge and giving me the shortcuts and helping the audience along with this as well, because I'm sure there's a bunch of people out there that are just like me, thinking okay, now where do I start? I know I need some stuff, but what stuff do I need, and what do I need to buy, and where do I focus my time? So I think I think we've got a good roadmap from here. Dustin, great to have you on as always. Thanks for running this down with me here. I'm going to give you one last opportunity here to give the audience one thought or one piece of advice to take with them, and you can do that now.
Oh man, you put me on the spot. Come check us out at jprifles.com. That's all I got right now.
Boom, there you go. Just like a company man. All right, Dustin,
Yeah.
you take care, dude. I'll be chatting with you soon, and everyone else, thanks for listening. Once again, thank you for listening to the Three Gun Show. If you like this type of content, you could support us on a monthly basis for as little as $5 by subscribing on Patreon at threegunshow.com/Patreon. All the wonderful Patreon people that support us every month, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. You mean the world to me. Another way to support the show is by giving your business to the companies that support the Three Gun Show, including Vortex Optics and JP Rifles. Till next week, I'm Dave Hartman, and I'll see you on the range.